What's good? What's good? What's good, YouTube? It is I, Stormy B-Man, and I'm back. This time, Kong, independent film. Salute to everybody out there. Sorry about this, a little bit of buffering. YouTube is playing with us. But The Hot, the Cool, and the Vicious is an independent film by First Distributors. When I say independent film, it's one of the films that was made by one of the smaller companies. You know, they did films on a shoestring budget. The sequences usually took place in the outdoors of the new territories of Hong Kong or even countrysides of Taiwan. There were not a lot of sets involved in these films, although they may have had minor sets and settings for indoor shots. But these type of films they could be made for what would at the time be, let's just say, US $50,000 or $60,000, basically under $100,000 Hong Kong dollars equivalent to United States dollars. There would be possibly, at that time, there was a huge difference. I don't know the currency change for at that time back in 1976, but it was pretty wide. So when a film was made on those budgets, they basically could go out and shoot and be done with the film 2 weeks to 30 days. And usually in Hong Kong films that featured martial arts, most of the budget and film took up of daily shoots, practicing and shooting the fighting action. This film is now considered a classic, not only because of the film, but primarily because of who starred in the film. And the director of the film is a gentleman by the name of Lee So-nam. Now, Lee So-nam, he directed over 40 kung fu films and action films during his heyday. And the films that he made were primarily featuring the same stars all over again. And he's also known in film credits as Tolo Po. And you might see that name in director's credits of some of the films that are more popular by him. Lee So-nam, he is famous for such classics as Eagle's Claw, The Tattoo Connection, Fist of Fury Part 2, The Challenge of Death, Shaolin vs. Lama, and Shaolin Invincible Sticks, just to name a few. Those films were, if you're a kung fu film buff, those 6 titles that I just rambled off are classics, according to if you know your kung fu. And a lot of the movie stars at the time, they worked for him because he didn't have the restrictions of huge contracts. So he did his films on a film by film basis. And some of his action stars liked working with him because of the looseness of his productions. They could come in, shoot what they were going to shoot, and be gone. They didn't have to be boggled down by studio rules and binding contracts and things of that nature. So First Films, they made lots of actioners and classics like The Master of the Flying Guillotine, and other films that feature Jimmy Wong Yu. These films carried the industry when the huge production companies like Shaw Brothers or later Golden Harvest, when they were doing their fare, if their films became repetitive as far as storylines, or if they got a little full of their actors, these films filled that void nicely. And Lee So-nam also worked with a number of stars who were very popular and became popular over the years. A couple of the gentlemen, Tan Tao Long and Don Wong Tao. These two gentlemen teamed up in a number of productions where they were usually pitted against one another, with Tan Tao Long, a Taekwondo leg expert, and Don Wong Tao, a Taekwondo fist expert, usually known in their films as the Northern Leg, Southern Fist. And the styles that they were noted for were primarily exactly that. Tan with his kicking style and Don with his fist style, which usually was a combination of crane fist, eagle's claw, eagle's fist, and dragon fist. So he was a fist fighter. Even though he was an actual Taekwondo practitioner in real life, that's where he made his hay on screen and on-screen fighting in the films. Now, they married in a couple of films that primarily repeated the themes of this film, because it was, again, one of those productions where they would have to team up against the villain. And the choreographer of this film was a very popular martial arts choreographer from that era, and his name was Tommy Lee. Now, Tommy Lee was also a character actor, but he did a lot of martial arts choreography on the independent films in Hong Kong and Taiwan at the time. He was a very slight man, very skinny, and usually played some kind of a lackey of a villain or something like that, or a henchman. Every once in a while, he would star as a villain, and he would wear these ridiculous wigs and paint his face and his beard and mustache, and he would look like a white hermit or something, or someone who has some type of illness or sickness in his body. He was highly noted for those type of things. And in the films that he played in, his action was noted because he could utilize each actor's specific skills, like Tan with his leg style or Don with his fist style. He could choreograph the action so acute that it complemented both men, and it always meshed together well when both men paired off on screen and fought one another, usually behind Tommy's choreography. The Hot, the Cool, and the Vicious, the main plot of the film revolved around Tan playing an inspector of a small village. And in the village, he was known to be a strict lawman who brought criminals to justice the hard way, beat down and then being thrown into prison. Don Juan Tao plays a playboy slash villain who comes to town, but he wasn't actually a villain. He was like a government agent working undercover. And he comes to town looking for the town's big villain. And unbeknownst to Tan's character, as he enters into the town, he comes under the name and guise of someone who had a horrible reputation out there as a villain and a playboy. So he had to live up to that when he came into town. Now, the villain in the film was played by veteran Hong Kong actor George. I'm trying to get his name right, because the gentleman, George Wong, Now, George Wong, you may have seen him in a number of films. He would usually play an old master or some kind of official or something on screen, and he had been around a long time in the industry. The film's cast is rounded out by Lu Shu-xian, a female actress that we also mentioned, who was in The Secret Rivals, and Mang Chung-san. Mang Chung-san was also a guy who played a villain a lot, and he plays the lead villain's son in this film. And if you've ever seen a kung fu film with him, he always plays a shady guy. In a lot of his films, he's always trying to rape women and stuff. Kind of makes you wonder about him being typecast in that type of role, because that guy was always a guy you wanted to see get his, you know. And then we also had Ko Fei, who was very famous through a number of films. He was even cast as an extra in Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon long time ago, back in 1973. But Ko Fei made a name for himself playing villains. And as I did my review on Lau Chai Lang's, what is the film that I did? Oh my goodness. You know, I got so many movies in my head. But he was known in Dragon on Fire, where he played this mysterious villain who would study other action stars' styles. And then he'll learn it, and then he'll come back and defeat them with their own style. Ko Fei has been around. Ko Fei was a guy who always lived up to the villain. And one of his most, for that family, but I will get it right though. Ko Fei I'm sorry, guys. Let's just put it like this. I remember the film The Invincible Armor as being one of the main films that he played a white eyebrows villain. As we go on, I will come back to that, the title of that film, because it will come to me. Legend of a Fighter. There it is. I'm sorry. It took me a moment. Legend of a Fighter. That's where he played Master Falk Young Gop's father and senior instructor in the film. A very classic film, Legend of a Fighter. I reviewed that film a few weeks back. And as we talk about the hot, the cool, and the vicious, I have also a special guest that I'm going to have on here with me. And as we talk about this film together, he wanted to come in because it's one of his favorites. And as we as we chop it up about kung fu films, he gets a little excited like I do, especially if I haven't told him I was going to do a specific title. So, you know, tonight I actually let him know in advance. We were supposed to do this last week, but we weren't able to get that together. But this week, you know, we're bringing it for you. And that's my man Hyphy. Hyphy, are you out there, bro? Hyphy was supposed to be out here to come in with me to talk about this. I don't see him out there yet. So I'll continue to cook until he makes himself available. But yeah, the hot, the cool, the vicious. What this, the southern fist and the northern leg style, they actually end up having to team up against the main villain. And the main villain in this film is played by Tommy Lee. And George Wong hires Tommy Lee to work as a killer for him, but it's only after he finds out that Don Juan Tao is not the man who he thought he was when he brought him in to work for him. And the seductress in the film, who is actually trying to get the heart of Don Juan Tao, Lu Shu Shin, her character plays a madam, and she works in a tea house slash brothel slash, she's a everything lady running this special little spot. And she has the hots for Don Juan Tao's character, and he has to play it up like he's a real, playboy or whatever. But as I said, he was the one that came into the film as a government official undercover. And they're trying to bring down the real villain, who is George Wong, the old guy. Now, as Tan was the town's chief inspector, when the main villain's son kills a woman after he was trying to rape her daughter, Tan Tao Lang sets out to bring him in. But George Wong was like, that's my son. You're not going to arrest my son. It was kind of like that thing. He's standing in front of the law. And because he was the main villain of the town, he could pull strings. So he actually took Tan Tao Lang's chief inspector position away from him, which kind of limited him. But he had a vow of bringing his son to justice. And it was a little bit of battle of wits going back and forth with that. And as they continued, it was really a sinister thing when Don got involved too, because Don acted like he was working for George Wong. So Tan Tao Lang was telling him, "Don't get in my way," and he was like, he's hired me to protect him, so. And Tan was like, okay, and they had a few square offs. It was always their skills matched, so it was like they were even in battle. So George Wong was like, this guy's not going to really work out good working for me. So he thought he'll get him another villain. And that turned out to be Tommy Lee. And Tommy Lee had some kind of crane, eagle fist style or whatever. And he looked really tripped out with this blondish orange wig, and his skin was real pale. He looked like a blonde haired vampire or a zombie or something. It was like crazy, which was another thing that these kung fu films were noted for, and the makeup was always weird when they dressed these characters up like that. Primarily when you saw them look like that, they were eunuchs. And eunuchs are wards of the emperor's estate who were castrated, so they didn't have any testosterone, so they were very feminine, and the emperor preferred them around because, one, they couldn't mess with his mistresses, and two, when the empress came into power, a eunuch was no threat to the throne like that. And there were a number of Hong Kong martial art films and also operatic films that depicted eunuchs. And eunuchs were very, very powerful in the emperor's court. I think my man Hyphy is in here now. What's up, Hyphy, man?
Wow. What's up, Tony?
What's going on with you, brother? We cooking on this, the hot, the cool, and the vicious this evening. And I know you wanted to get in and chime in because it's one of your favorite joints, man. I just did the character breakdown and what the primary plot of the film is. What are your recollections of this little classic?
Magenta, Don Juan Tao, that's my boy right there. So, I'll fuck with anything that he be in. But, cold part of that movie is that motherfucking, that madam. I like how she get down in that movie. Landlady.
Yeah, that was Lu Shu Shin. She also was in the Secret Rivals. Remember when we did Secret Rivals last time?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I really liked her.
I touched on how she was trying to be a seductress to Don Juan's character in the film, and how he was undercover himself, and he was trying to downplay. He was trying to downplay, her affections, but he still got with her, cause she was fine.
Hey, he thought he played the shit out of her, huh?
Yeah.
Hey, I think if he was moving like a cold little player. Thought he played the shit out of him.
Yeah. The one thing that I said earlier before you came in, I was talking about how in the film she was like a madam / boss lady / film seductress. She had many hats working in that tea house, wouldn't you say?
Hey, that's the overall definition. That's like a real, what I'm saying, like a slick type of husband, like the type of women I kind of came up under, when I was coming up. I'm saying? They, just overall husband. Any way they could get it, that's how they was getting it. But yeah, nigga, she was a madam, everything. She was getting it.
Yeah, and there was another thing about how when she took Don Juan Tao into her back room, she had a secret chamber in there. Yeah, that lady was a trip, man. She was a trip. And Tan Tao Long, his character as the inspector, he had his position taken away from him by the old guy who was the main villain. What's his name? George Wong, and because he wanted to go after his son who had raped that one girl and killed the girl's mom, and he vowed to just bring that dude to justice. But George Wong wasn't having it. He was like, "You ain't arresting my son," So it was like a little thing going back and forth till he hired Tommy Lee to be his right hand man when he found out that Don Juan couldn't be trusted.
Mr. Long, yeah, that was his business partner. He was running. They call it the fracals, the currency smuggling. We just call it money laundering. Niggas like me. But yeah, that was his little partner in crime.
Yeah, it was, this movie was a lot of fun, man, but the fighting was really off the chain because of the styles that they had. As I had mentioned prior to you joining, I was talking about Tan had the Northern Leg style and Don had the Southern Fist style. But Tommy Lee's character kind of had like the crane, he was like the crane fist fighter or something. And the way they had him made up, he looked like a eunuch or like a vampire or something, remember? Yeah.
It was like his, he had like that shit on his face or whatever. That's what I call it. That nigga had some shit on his face. What's up with it, my Jenna, PK? I see you up in there, you heard me? What's up with it?
Yeah, also we got 78 is out there too. What's up, 78? Macadon 1, Derek Bailey. PK, Walter Wilder, Boxing Conversations with Reggie Owens, Dark Truth was in there from the jump, and GG, legendary Top Cats out there. He says, peace.
See. Yeah,
So,
that nigga had a whole bunch of powder on his face.
So tell us a little more about your recollections of the film, Hyphy. Some things that you remember.
Hey, see, me say this is a cool little, plot because this like one of the a classic plot storyline. It's always a nigga who's coming through. He like went away to prison for a long time, or he was like like a family member who had went away for a while, and he come back. This nigga's supposed to be the coldest, killer and everything. He got a cold history. And this nigga ended up really being undercover. In Chinese film, they call them inspectors. They'd be like the general inspector. our term is, like an undercover agent. They working for the Babylon. But yeah, that's like a classic little theme in these movies also. But yeah, he came through. That nigga was playing the shit out that little role. And shit, he was cool, but shit, that landlady got his ass. See.
Yeah, I liked. I really liked a lot of the scenes where Tan Tao Lang was fighting the guys, and he really showed a lot of his leg skill, his kicking prowess in this movie. Man, he was locking them up with his legs, and he was tripping them. He was like multiple combination kicks and everything. And for anybody out there who liked John Liu and what he could do with his kicking style, just know that, as I mentioned before when I talked about the Secret Rivals, that John Liu's Sifu in real life was Tan Tao Lang. Tan Tao Lang trained him for over 5-6 years, and it's amazing how great a martial artist that Tan Tao Lang was in real life. And but he was very low key outside of the films he made. I mean, another classic he made was Tattoo Connection, which had Jim Kelly in it and Bolo. A lot of people might remember that film. But, he was just a guy at a time when they were looking for real martial artists who could do the action in front of the camera as opposed to just being a choreographer or something. And he made a nice little career out of it. He was also in another film that I reviewed, The Hand of Death, with Jackie Chan. And he was the main star of that film as well.
And what's that one he had with Angela Mao? Is that Duel of the Desert? That's the name of it, huh?
Yeah, Duel with Devils. That's the one he did with Angela Mao. And he did another one with her called The Himalayan. That was a Golden Harvest film with Chen Sing as the villain at the end. The Himalayan is a really good film that I should review sometime, because Chen Sing's role in that film, when you talk about a mustache twisting villain, that's what he was in that. Evil SOB, bro. Definitely. Mm-hmm. But let's talk about Tommy Lee in here, who was also the choreographer of the film, Hyphy. This guy right here, man, he didn't look like much. He was a real skinny little something in there in real life, but his martial arts skills was excellent. He was right up there with Yuen Wu Ping and some of the others. And when he played villains, he usually played an unmatchable guy, and it took a couple of guys to fight against him.
See. And they tried to play it off. You would have thought he really wasn't shit. Because, the first time you seen him was when they was about to go rescue his son, I think. Because, Tan Tao Yang had got word, where his son was camped out in the country. So they was all, about to go over there, follow him. And then this nigga, he, hop out. And then he tell him, you hear about what's his name? Don Wong, this nigga undercover inspector. He's like, he hop out the tree. But, you see this nigga, he just like, a cat who walking with a limp and shit. He ain't even fast on his feet. So that'll throw you off, you heard me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that shit threw you off. But, hey, you know what, this is one of the funniest parts. When that nigga say, Eugene. Everybody, he be studying that nigga, you heard me?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you keep talking foolish. Like, you know what I'm saying? You don't know what you're talking about. Because that's Don Wong's name in that movie, Pa Eugene. But every time you say Pa Eugene, I'm laugh.
Yeah, man. He had it with emphasis, And they had him in there. He looked kind of, he was like kind of hunchback, but the sucker could fight his ass off. It was like, you call yourself making fun of him and get fucking killed, man, because the dude's martial arts skills was off the charts. But he looked tripped out in there, man. has such great kicking skill. They had to, like, when he fight against some of these guys on screen, you could tell he had to pull back some because he was so much well versed with his legs that, you know, in some scenes you could almost tell like the timing might be a little bit off because he was just so much better, you know, so he would have to pull back a little bit. That's why, you know, it was interesting. I don't know, off the top of my head, I don't think Hyphy he was ever in a film with Wong Ching Lee. Do you?
Nah, not me. Me can't think of one off top.
Yeah, I don't think that he did a film. Now John Liu did films with Wong Ching Lee, but I don't think Tan Tao Lang did any films with Wong Ching Lee, and that would be very interesting. I would have to look over his filmography and see, but I don't recall him doing a film with Wong Ching Lee at all. And that would be very interesting if he never did, because those are two of the most supreme Taekwondo experts who have ever been in martial art films, to have never competed against one another on screen.
That's my Jenna too, Tommy Lee.
Yeah, man.
Hey, and that wasn't his. That really, that was like him. It was good, but that wasn't it. This movie is not him at his like his highest level. So I've been watching 7 Steps of Kung Fu. I said, that's when it showed Tommy Lee to fight his ass off. Even though he was a villain in that one too. But that's my movie. That just showed his skill, his fighting ability.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm looking over his filmography right now, and I do not see any film where he was in with Wong Ching Lee. That's very interesting. I would like to know why they never did a film together. It's probably an ego thing, really. That's the only thing I could think, because John Liu played in films with Wong Ching Lee, but not this guy. So that'd be interesting. What are your recollections of Don Juan Tao, Hyphy? What do you think about him?
This was my boy up in this movie, because I said he played that role so well. He came out, he had his little sidekick. Remember when they stole the coins, the niggas was trying to smuggle the money up out of there? They ambushed the niggas, whipped their ass and shit. I said, he had, and then he faked that fight he faked the fight in the tea house, at the beginning of the movie, to kind of throw everybody off with our boys.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I said, that was cool right there. And, them niggas ended up being little, crimies and shit. They was, out there doing their thing, but the whole time, he was undercover. So I said, that was, hella cool. And then, that whole, I think he was from the South, right? Southern, he was like,
the Southern Fist.
He was the baddest one from the South. Liang, he was the baddest one from the North. So that was a cool, little clash. And then you seen the fight scene where they had, them niggas was dead even as far as skill and things.
Yeah, they were. That's why I was saying earlier before you came on that they squared off a couple of times in the film, and their skills were kind of like on par. They matched up, they were a draw pretty much. And that's why it ended up taking the two of them to take on Tommy Lee at the end,
He was talking shit to the general. He was like, hey, I told you, I protect this house. He was like, when Leanne came through, whipped all his men out, and that nigga was like, I told you, I protect this house. So that shit happened outside.
Yeah.
It was a lady bodyguard. He was playing the shit out I thought he was playing the shit out the general.
Yeah, let me take it to the chat real quick. We got Walter Wilder out there. He says the villain's red or orange hair represents that he may have been mixed with European ancestry, which meant that he may be evil. That's an interesting take. I do believe I've heard something about that, but I always associate those guys with the pale faces with those eunuchs as well, because typically they would have them in there with high pitched dubbed over voices, sort of like Carter Wong was in Born Invincible, because when they study those certain styles as eunuchs, they don't have any testicles, so it's like they basically have no testosterone in their body, so that on the dubbed audio track of the films, their dubbed over voices would always be real high pitched and make them sound like women or something. But he wasn't a eunuch in this film. I just made the reference to eunuchs because that's how they would always depict them and how they would look in makeup in those films. And Gigi says he's saluting at PK and Macedon. Walter Wilder also says Tantao Lang mom had John Liu train him. And he says Tommy Lee moved to New York and he ran Kung Fu and a restaurant for a short time in the 80s. And he also says good kickers, Case Wong, Ronnie Liu, and of course Sun Chin. Yeah, Sun Chin. Huh? Oh, Casanova Wong.
Yeah, hell yeah.
He abbreviated his name. Yeah, he abbreviated his name. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, Casanova Wong, another Korean who was known for his kicks. Yeah, the Hot, the Cool, and the Viscious was another one of those two-on-one tandem films that started with The Secret Rivals. We talked about that and how those films developed into that element because it was more exciting to see the different styles all come together. The Southern Fist, Northern Leg, and then they taking on this guy who was kind of like a crane fist fighter, and he was a little bit superior to either one of them as individuals. So it took both of them to team up to take him down.
See. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what it took, because, shit. When what was it? Liang, he was taking the son. He was about to take him to jail, and that's when they ran to Mr. Lung, and then they had their little one-on-one, and Lung was getting the best of him.
Yeah. This film also has some good one-liners too, like you said when he said "Pai Ying,"
How you doing?
Yeah, but it's so funny because those moments in the film, that's why you like to watch the English dubs of them, because if you've seen them before, that shit is funny as hell. And if you see the subtitle versions, it don't come off as the same, but the English dubs are always a lot of fun. When they get to mimicking what these guys are really saying, in English,
Hi, Eugene. He was stunning that nigga, man.
Yeah, I would recommend this film to everybody that's out there listening because it has great action. The stars who are in it are guys who could really handle themselves very well. So it's like the acting is not too over the top. Matter of fact, you could tell that they're kind of playing who they really are, in these films. This, especially Tantao Lang, because in most of his films, he came across like he didn't have much personality, and I think he was really like that in real life. I think he was very stoic in real life. But Don Wong was kind of like always grinning and shit, like twinkling in the eye or something, because he was playing that cool dude role, And then, of course, Tommy Lee playing the villain, he knew how to get into those characters. That's why I said when they had him like he had a hunchback and everything, that shit was funny to me.
And that was his specialty. Like he was like, you could tell he was real fluid and swift with his, acting and shit. But he was like good to play that role because you could tell that nigga had game. Like that nigga had a mouthpiece on him in real life. Don Juan.
Yeah.
He had that smooth personality because he really ain't no villain type of dude really. He just a smooth character.
Mm-hmm. Offs that these guys had, when they start at the end of the film, when they're competing with one another, and then they have to team up to take old boy down, because they couldn't square off with their skills. It's like some of the earlier 70s films that they call bashers, where the guys just kind of swing their arms left and right and be kind of swinging wild and throwing their legs instead of snapping kicks and stuff like that. The choreography was very crude, and the actors really couldn't do much with the action that was choreographed. But once they started finding these actual real martial artists, it elevated the level of the fight scenes tremendously. I mean, were you able to notice that as the films, went forward?
Yeah, see, I seen I talked about this. I think last time he was on, but this is another one of them films also where you got the characters and you get it full screen. When they're in combat, and I'm talking about the camera not switching too often, things like that, and that you can only do that if you got dudes that really know how to fight because you can't fake these types of scenes with stun doubles and things. So yeah, this is one of them films that show that too. And yeah, I said some earlier before I got knocked off, but yeah, this is another one of them 2-on-2 type films where niggas had to team up because they would have got their ass whipped. Well, they did get their ass whipped. So, hey, niggas had to come together, or they was both about to be up out of there. But this is one where it's the same thing too because they under the impression, we about to be enemies, but then it's we really undercover.
Yeah.
So we after the same thing. I just can't blow my cover.
Taking it back to the chat for a second, Boxing Conversations with Reggie Owens says, "Damn, y'all know these films." And Macadon One says, "At Reggie, salute, bro." Walter Wilder says both Casanova Wong and the Silver Fox and Chan San, who play the Golden Wheel Lama and the villain in 7 Steps of Kung Fu, are former South Korean military champions. Yeah, I heard that before, Walter Wilder. One of the films I'll be doing up in the future is Shaolin versus Lama, which Chan Shan is a main star in that one, even though he's not really a good guy, but he's kind of like a anti-hero in that film. But I'll be getting to that one down the line. But yeah, you are absolutely right about their backgrounds. And those 3 guys, along with there was one more Korean fighter. He'll come to me, but those guys were awesome. And all of them had tremendous athleticism and kicking styles. Gil Coles is out there. He says, "Salute Stormy B-Man," and the chat. What's up, Gil Coles? Smash that like button, people. We're talking Kung Fu this evening. The hot, the cool, and the vicious. I kind of remember this being a take, hyphy, on like the spaghetti westerns, like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. You know what I mean? And not just in the similar title, but the plot of the film and how it works out. Which also takes me to another film that it mirrors a Western, and that was a film with Don Wong, your boy, called Along Comes a Tiger. Did you ever see that one?
Yeah, same.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the film that I recommend to the audience for the next viewing. Along Comes a Tiger. That's Dong Won Tao, and he's playing a silent guy in the film that mirrors the Charles Bronson film, where Charles Bronson, when he was a little boy, his dad was killed, and he has to go hunt down, I think it was Henry Fonda, to avenge his dad's death. And this guy, I think it's Woody Strode in there and a couple of other guys. But that's what Along Comes a Tiger is based on. Very, very good martial arts film. And not much dialogue by Don Wong in that film because of the character that he's playing in there. But what'd you think of everyone and how they came together in this particular film, Hyphy?
Hey, we got to bring up this funny moment too. Remember, they was trying. Damn, what scene was it? Where they had the nigga hanging and tied up, and the nigga came in tickling that nigga's feet.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, man. And at first, when they showed the foot, you thought it might be a lady. He was sitting up there with the feather tickling his foot, and then the camera draws back, and it was one of them dudes that they had tied up. He was tickling his feet with a feather. Yeah, man. Yeah. Hey, the other part too. They probably say this is like the funniest part that me liked in the movie. You see, Don Juan, that nigga, he swore that he was the coldest fighter. He coming from the South. And remember, he told Liang, "I've never been defeated." So, he thought he was like the coldest fighter. So, yeah.
When Mr. Long came, was like, the general told you was a good kung fu fighter and a good actor too. And he was like, we own to you. And then Mr. Long hopped up and said, because Mr. Long, that's the bodyguard.
Right.
Like shit, I could stop you, from escaping with them coins. So then he was like, nobody here could stop me. I'm like the best fighter. And the nigga started fighting. And Mr. Long was whipping his ass. This nigga Don Wong a hoe. And this nigga act like he was about to keep fighting. That nigga hopped over the wall. That nigga ran.
Yeah, he knew Tommy was turning that heat up on his ass. He was gonna kill his ass.
Yeah, that nigga ran for his life, and then ran right into the landlady. She played the shit out of him.
Yeah, that's what's so funny about these films. In a kung fu movie, when the guys be fighting, and they get to that point where one of the guys realize he can't beat the other guy, they always break out running, man. It's like that's a staple of a kung fu film. It's like he realized he can't win, and the motherfucker just take off, start running, man. And it's a chase scene. It turns into
hey, running, or nigga start pulling out some type of knife. He had a like secret knife hidden, sword, something like that, and then he ended up getting destroyed with that bamboo stick.
Absolutely, man. That's one of the things about these films. It's just like, and who does ambushes better than the Chinese in kung fu films, Hyphy? Tell me who does better ambushes.
Hell nah. They come on some ninja type shit. They could be sneaking, creeping, and it'd be like 20 of them up in your house before you even wake up.
And they'll plot some shit on your ass too. They'll be like, yeah, when he comes around here, this is what we're gonna do, and it's like oh man, It's gruesome, man. Those ambushes.
Because they, Don Juan, he ambushed them to find out about the money laundering. But then remember, they also tried that weak ass to ambush Mr. Lum. Towards the end, they tried to lock him into the house. That ain't go too well though. But yeah, the coldest little ambush of the movie, shit, when she got Juan to drink that tea. He played the shit out of that.
Man, that lady was awesome in there because in The Secret Rivals, she was playing that little damsel in distress. Remember? They was like, oh, what's her name? And the little boy said, oh, her name? She's Ching Ching Ching. And dude was like, Ching Ching Ching. He was like, oh, what a lovely name. It reminded me of a joke that one of the old comedians said. It's like, I think it was Muhammad Ali. He might have said it. He said that when they name themselves, they just throw a coin on the ground and the sound that it makes is their name.
Hey, so yeah, she was playing she had the little good girl status up in that movie though. But in this one, she's totally different.
Oh yeah, she was bad in this one, man. She was bad. She was lecherous, man. It was crazy how she acted in this one. Walter Wilder in the chat says Tommy Lee also plays the same character in the Jade Statuette and the movie To Catch a Tiger with Wong Tao and Philip Ko. Yeah, he's talking about Kofe. Along Comes a Tiger is the title that I know it under, Walter Wilder. It's called Along Comes a Tiger. But that might be one of the other regional titles, as I explained in one of the other streams. Sometimes when these films are released in different parts of the world, they would give a title that is more, coinciding with something that Americans would recognize. And Along Comes the Tiger is the original title that I know the film by, but you're right, that could be a regional title for the film. And he's talking about Moon Yi is the other kicker I was trying to think of. Thanks a lot for that. Christopher Journay is in there. He says salute to the chat, and he says at Stormy B, you should send some kung fu films to Joshua so he can knock out Ruiz with a kick. Well, he gonna need a lot more than a kung fu movie for Ruiz, because Ruiz gonna have something for him. That's for real. So yeah, Hyphy, do you have any final words about this particular film that you want to share with the audience, or any specific recollections of it?
Damn, I just lost my train of thought, but all right, the chick who wants to kill Tan Tao Liang, what you know about her?
Oh, yeah. Let me think of her name. Cause she plays she was playing that young lady that was with her uncle or her granddad or whatever, and she wanted to kill old boy. Yeah, that's Sun Chao Lin. She played in about 30 kung fu films. I remember her, and she's been in some films like The Revenge of the Iron Fist Maiden, The Angry Hero. I remember her in that. Kung Fu Girls, The Casino, The Angry Tiger, and Fist of Shaolin with Pai Ying. Yeah, she was one of those actresses. I think she did from the 70s, the early 70s, to about the early 80s, 83 or 84, something like that. She was in the movies. But she wasn't one of those real popular actresses. But she did get a chance to be in some of those films that you would see her. You know, her face is familiar. You know, but she wasn't one of those real popular female actresses.
Yeah, because me seeing her around, you know, a few other times, but she was never like no, you know, lead role or anything like that. But yeah, I was just wondering, you know, what was going on with her.
And she's from Taiwan also. She's another one of those that was from Taiwan. So
yeah, that was a cool little one. How you know, Liang, you know, he had his wife, and then, you know, Wong, shit, that's who he hitched up with when they went out of town at the end.
Yeah, man. That was so funny, though, where Don Wong had told her when she was asking him if he had killed somebody for her, and he was like, oh, well, what would you give me? You know, what, you know, he was trying to get some from her.
What's in it for me, type ass nigga?
I tell you, his role in the film as a playboy, man, she slapped the shit out of him, though.
How bad do you want it? Oh, looking at.
Yeah, then she came back and was like, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah.
She wanted to do it in the first place. Shit, what are you talking about? Had to go think about it. Yeah, right. And Walter Wilder comes back. He says, the music from the spaghetti western Day of Anger from Ritz Ortolani was used in the movie Mars Villa and the movie and several others. Yeah, that music, man. You and I talked about that theme song when it comes on and they show the three guys doing their styles. I love that opening, man, because it's like that
might be like the coolest opening. Not only the theme song, but just the coolest opening credit. I mean, beginning intro, because that song is hella cool. And then most of these movies, you know, they got just like one character, you know, getting it in, showing their skills, but now they put, you know, three after they show each one. They put all three of them. So yeah, that might be the coolest intro to a movie, to one of these movies.
Absolutely, man, absolutely. And I remember you had that avatar for the movie poster for your avatar on the online. I remember I saw that and I was like, "What you doing with that poster for, you know, Hot, the Cool, and the Vicious? What you know about that?" And you was like, "Oh man, that's one of my favorite joints." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And you in there then. I know, because it's like, dude, that, you know, in all the advertisements for the film, they put the three of them on that poster in the same type of way, you know, so it's like that was their trademark for that film. You know, That was the trademark, man. That was so cool, though, the way those guys would come out there and, you know, when the credits start rolling and they show one, then the other one pop up on the other side of the screen and dude pops up in the middle. I was like, yeah, that's tight, man. Totally tight.
It was the you know, playoff I just had the name. Salt and Pepper, right?
Yeah.
There was playoff of their album. And if you type in, you know, that's what it really come up more. Of course, Hot, Cool, Viscious, that's what pop up. But yeah, that whole cover and everything, that was a playoff for that. And it's a shirt out there. I gotta buy that shirt of this movie cover. But yeah, that was a cool. You know, you see that movie cover and yeah, you either gonna think Salt and Pepper or this movie. You know some kung fu.
Yeah, and since it was from 1976, you know, it's way before Salt and Pepper. So Salt and Pepper got it from them. You know, that's what that was. But you know, a lot of hip hop was based around the kung fu films too. Some themes and things that they took from those films, because they were a class of their own. You know, it's like when those films flooded the U.S. market in the early 70s, we really hadn't seen shit like that before. That's why when you would go to the theater and you see stuff, audiences would be screaming, laughing, and howling, man, at the stuff that they would see on the screen from a kung fu film, because it was just some outrageous shit that you hadn't seen before. I remember the first time I saw Five Fingers of Death, man, and it was like seeing those guys do those amazing leaps in the air and stuff, and then they flip and they come down. I'd be like, damn, how they get so high up in the air? Because, you know, I was a kid watching that shit. And that was like the superhero films back then, you know, watching one guy take on a fucking army of 20 or 30, you know, knives sticking out of his belly and stuff, and he's still going. He just ties his shirt around his guts and keep fighting. It's like those movies were a trip, man. And then they were always showing some nudity too, you know. So as a little boy, you watching these films, you're like, damn, you know, it's like.
Why the general's son, that sorry ass nigga, why he say, what he say? Dad, what's so special about him? I could beat him.
Oh yeah.
That nigga suck, man. That nigga can't fight for shit.
Yeah, but that's the dude that turned out to be his boy though, remember? You talking about that dude that was talking about Don Juan. He's like, hey, you over here talking to Whiteface here, you know. He was jealous because old girl was digging on old boy Don Juan, you know.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I forgot about that. But yeah, his son couldn't fight for shit. He was getting dragged all down the mountain on the rope when Charlie Yang was dragging that nigga out the tongue. Like he was dragging a camel.
Man, it was great, man. It was great. But I know, I forget, what was that they finally did to get rid of Tommy Lee? I'm trying to remember, because some of these films, in my mind, they run together. I haven't watched it in a minute. The end of it, I saw it. I watched it a few days ago and fell asleep on it, so I didn't watch the end. Because I was trying to refresh myself, because I know you had said you had watched it a few days ago yourself, but I ended up falling asleep on it.
Hey, see, that's funny, because I was just about to, I can't remember exactly how did they kill off the landlady. So I'm going to tell you your question first, and you tell me mine. We were at the end, they just ended up, because, you know, they had like, it was like all out war, and they ended up just going and fighting, what's his name, together. Tan Yang and Don Juan, they just ended up fighting them together, yeah. And then, you know, first, you know, he was kind of like whipping on both of them, then they started whipping on him, and then, you know, he seen that he was losing, and that nigga, he pulled out the secret, he had like the knives, and then, you know, he was fighting with the knives and stuff, and they eventually got past him. It was real similar to was not as similar, but it was kind of like the secret rivals in it. You know, like the two had to come together, put their sides together to defeat the better fighter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it was. So yeah, they end up then, you know, he was kind of trying to run off, and then they just end up, you know, whipping on him like that. I can't damn. I just seen it. I was like, how the landlady get killed?
I forgot. It's like I didn't watch the end. Wasn't it
it was somewhere in that little shop where they had him hostage. I had to be up in there.
Wasn't it Tommy Lee?
Who killed her?
Yeah. I forget, man.
Nah, it might have been. It has to be the chick who wanted to kill Tan Yang. It had to have something to do with her when they like broke him out. They helped him escape.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it was something up in there, because they killed the general and they killed her. They was laying at the same spot. And then, Mr. Lung, he came in and seen them both laying down. So you're like, hey, fuck them. I'm about to save myself. But that was that's just a classic little thing. The Victor come to town, and it's like he got this reputation as a stone cold killer or this master fighter, but y'all don't know this nigga didn't. He really an inspector. He didn't. He undercover.
Yeah. He told old boy that tried to fight him, he was like, you need to know your enemy's strengths before you try to start a fight with him or something. Then he whooped his ass.
Yeah, see. Yeah, he had Tantalian kind of mad at him.
Yeah. Walter Wilder said they held hands and combined their skills, Wong's hands and Tan's legs. Yeah. And then that's how they broke old boy down. But that whole thing about the 2 against 1, that dynamic played out over a few years. I'm talking about from 1974, 75, when the Secret Rivals came on the scene, to all the way up to like 1978, 79. Because I think it was Jackie Chan when he came along with Snake and the Eagle Shadow and The Drunken Master, where the guy went and studied a certain style and he could come back and defeat the villain. That became something new and fresh at that time. But the 2-on-1 thing played out in a number of films, even in some Shaw Brothers films, where you would have Alexander Fushing and what's his name, the tall brother with the muscles, Chi Kwa Chung, the muscular guy. They would team up and fight villains in their films together. And that became a theme for a number of years. The 2 against 1, because the villains were so badass that it would take 2 guys to beat them. So yeah, I remember that well. So since I already threw it out there, Hyphy, I said next time we could do Along Comes the Tiger. And since that's your boy Don Wong, you want to come back for that show?
Yeah, that's my dinner right there.
Okay, so that's what we'll do, and then I'll get that the name of that Western that it's based on, and I'll do a comparison of the stories, because that's basically what they took that Charles Bronson film. I can't think of the name of it right now, but that's what Along Comes the Tiger was like, the Asian, the Eastern version of that, with kung fu instead of guns. So yeah, and Philip Coffey is in there with him as well. So, but yeah, man, unless you have something else you want to say on that, we could get ready to close this one out. It's been a great recall of this film. The guys who starred in it, they made a lot of films in the industry, man, and it's like, we could go on and on about the stuff that they were able to do and the magic that they were able to create choreography wise for the action in these films. These men are to be lauded for their accomplishments and their feats, man. It's amazing. Like, there's nothing right now, especially over here in the U.S., to pay homage to them for what their contributions were to the industry. But and I don't think you'll ever see anything like it again, because even now they got pop stars over in Asia playing in martial art films, but they're not even real fighters. They're barely even actors. It is like they're mostly musicians and shit playing in these action films. And some of the old stars are choreographing the action for the films, but these people can't hold a candle to what they used to do.
Yeah, all those films suck, man. It was just like pop. Like I said, that's just pop, pop films and stuff. I ain't even consider them, martial artist films. The film's weak.
Yeah, it's really a it's really a down time in there, because even the real fighters like Donnie Yen, they're aging out, you know, and you just, there's no one to replace them. You know, it's like nothing on the horizon who could come behind them. So that's why, again, you can hold on to these little gems that we talk about because they mean so much historically for the industry. You know, they mean a hell of a lot.
Yeah. And we looking at what Tim that's over 50 years old. Crazy, huh?
Exactly. 50 and 40 plus years of action cinema, man.
Yeah, because this one was like 78 or 70. This one, it comes the same year as Secret Rivals, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so 50 plus years old, and just can't even duplicate that no more.
Absolutely, man, not at all. So,
but yeah, good wrap up. Good wrap up.
Yeah, so I guess that's gonna be it for this evening's show. This has been another episode of the Kung Fu Film Focus, where we profile the hot, the cool, and the vicious. Thank you everybody for joining us. Shout out to the LDBC. The next film that we'll do will be Along Comes the Tiger, featuring Don Juan and Kofi. And we hope that you guys get a chance to watch this film. It's out there on YouTube, on the Wu-Tang channel. I think it's out there, or I know I've seen it on YouTube. Check it out, and you'll be abreast on what we're talking about.